Suzuki, please come get me. Her voice broke on the last word. Burns marked her forearms like badges of shame, her silver bridesmaid dress hidden beneath a grease-stained apron. The kitchen floor was cold beneath her, surrounded by towers of dirty pots and empty serving platters. Beyond the double doors, laughter and music pulsed through the Hamilton estate, her sister's wedding reception in full celebration mode. Without her, Suzuki's voice came through the phone, like silk wrapped around a blade. I'm on my way. Don't move. Hey, friends. To understand how Uju Hamilton ended up collapsed on a kitchen floor while her family celebrated just meters away, we need to go back. Back to a family that saw her as a servant and a man who saw her as sacred. And there you have it. Another forbidden romance built on rescue, obsession, and two people who thought they could hide from fate. If you're addicted to protective mafia bosses, curvy heroines who deserve the world, and love stories where danger meets devotion, you're in exactly the right place. Hit that subscribe button because we've got more intense romances coming your way. Korean kingpins, resilient black women, family revenge, all the emotional warfare you crave. Smash that like button and drop a comment telling me what you're doing right now and what city you're in. Are you cooking dinner, recovering from your own family drama? Listening while you meal prep, late night when you should be sleeping? Where in the world are you? I love knowing where my romance lovers are tuning in from. Stick around to find out how this story unfolds. Uju Hamilton's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m., the same time it had every day for the past 5 years. She silenced it before the second ring, a habit born from not wanting to disturb anyone in the main house, even though her guest house sat a full 50 meters away from where her father, stepmother, and stepsisters slept in air-conditioned comfort. She moved through her morning routine in the dark. Shower, head wrap, the same faded jeans, an oversized shirt she wore for prep work. By 5 a.m., she was in her small kitchen, reviewing orders for the week. A corporate lunch for 50. A birthday dinner for 12. An anniversary celebration that wanted her famous coconut rice and peppered snail. Her phone buzzed. A text from her stepmother, Patience. Family dinner tonight. 7 p.m. sharp. Cook something impressive. Your father is bringing business associates. No, please. No, thank you. Just commands, as always. Uju typed back, yes, ma. She didn't bother mentioning she had 3 client orders to fulfill today. Patience wouldn't care. By noon, Uju's small catering operation was in full swing. Her tiny kitchen was a symphony of controlled chaos, pots bubbling, spices toasting, her hands moving with the muscle memory of someone who'd been cooking since childhood. This was where she felt powerful, in control, valuable. Her assistant, Ngozi, arrived with the fresh fish from the market. Uju, you need to eat something. You've been working since dawn. Later, Uju said, tasting the egusi soup and adding a pinch more crayfish. We need to deliver the okonkwo order by 2. You always say later. Ngozi shook her head, but didn't push. She'd learned that Uju Hamilton was immovable when it came to her own needs. That evening, Uju prepared dinner for 12 in the main house's expansive kitchen. A space she was allowed to use but never to linger in. She made her father's favorite, oaf nsala with catfish, jollof rice with a perfect crust, plantain fried to golden perfection, and her signature chin-chin for dessert. At 7 p.m., she set the dining table with her stepmother's fine china. At 7:15, the family and guests sat down to eat. At 7:16, Uju returned to her guest house, her stomach empty, listening to the sounds of laughter and conversation that didn't include her. She heated up leftover beans from 3 days ago and ate alone, standing at her kitchen counter, scrolling through tomorrow's orders. This was her life. This had always been her life. The Eco Hotel ballroom was the kind of expensive that whispered rather than shouted. Crystal chandeliers, imported marble floors, and guests whose jewelry could fund small businesses. Uju's catering team had been hired for a private corporate event, the kind where you didn't ask too many questions about who was paying or why security looked like they could kill you with a dessert spoon. Chef, the suya needs to go out in 5 minutes, Ngozi called from the prep station. Taste it first, Uju instructed, her hands busy arranging plantain on serving platters. Tell me if it needs more yaji. She'd learned to read rooms like this. The men in expensive agbada who spoke in coded language. The women dripping in gold who smiled with their mouths, but not their eyes. The security personnel who tracked every entrance and exit. This wasn't just a corporate dinner. This was power playing dress-up. But Uju didn't care about their business. She cared about her reputation. And her food was going to be flawless. Across the ballroom, Suzuki Tanjiro sat at a corner table with clear sight lines to every door, a habit that had kept him alive in a profession where carelessness was fatal. He'd come to Lagos to finalize a territorial agreement with local partners. The dinner was political theater, a show of cooperation and wealth. He'd expected to be bored. Then he saw her. She moved through the kitchen chaos like a conductor, commanding without shouting, correcting without cruelty. She was curvy in a way that would make most men stare, her dark skin gleaming under the kitchen lights, her head wrap vibrant against her chef's whites. But what caught his attention wasn't her appearance. It was her focus. The way she tasted everything but ate nothing. The way she checked her watch obsessively, like she was running out of time. Boss, you're staring, Kim murmured beside him in Korean. Find out everything about her, Suzuki said quietly, his eyes never leaving the kitchen entrance where she just appeared with a tray of perfectly arranged appetizers. I can get her contract details from. Not the paperwork. Everything else. Service lasted 3 hours. Suzuki barely touched his food, which was unfortunate because it was exceptional. When the last guest finally left and the catering team began breaking down, he stood. Stay here, he told Kim, and walked toward the kitchen with the purposeful stride of someone who always got what he wanted. Uju was wiping down her station when expensive shoes appeared in her peripheral vision. Stay for dinner. She looked up, and her breath caught. The man addressing her was tall, Korean, and wore danger like cologne. And he was looking at her like she was the most interesting thing in the room. Suzuki Tanjiro became Uju's most lucrative and most confusing client within 2 weeks of their first meeting. He booked her for a private dinner party at a luxury penthouse in Ikoyi. When she quoted her standard rate, he transferred triple without negotiation. When she arrived with Ngozi to prep, his assistant handed her an envelope with another full payment. For your time, he'd said, like money was air. The dinner itself was strange. 12 men in expensive suits, conversations that stopped when she entered the room, and Suzuki watching her with that same unnerving intensity from the Eco Hotel. The jollof is perfect, he'd said when she brought out the main course. Sit. Eat with us. Uju had frozen. That's not professional. I'm paying you enough to redefine professional. Sit. She'd made an excuse about kitchen timing and fled. But she felt his eyes on her the entire night. The bookings continued. A birthday celebration. A business meeting that was definitely not a business meeting. A casual dinner that required her to prepare a 5-course meal. Each time, he paid triple. Each time, he asked her to eat. Each time, she refused. Until the night, he found her in the kitchen at 11 p.m., surrounded by dirty dishes, visibly exhausted. Why don't you eat? He asked, leaning against the doorframe like he had all the time in the world. I do eat, Uju said, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. Liar. He moved closer. I've watched you for 3 weeks. You feed everyone else, but you don't feed yourself. Why? That's personal. So is my money, but I keep giving it to you. He picked up a serving spoon, scooped some leftover egusi soup, and held it out to her. Eat. Mr. Tanjiro. Suzuki. And eat. or I'm canceling every future booking until you do. Uju stared at him, at the soup, at the absolute audacity of this man who thought he could command her like he commanded everyone else in his dangerous world. Then her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Suzuki's expression softened into something that looked almost like concern. When was the last time you ate a full meal? I don't remember. He moved the spoon closer to her mouth. Then start now. And because she was tired and hungry, and something about the way he looked at her made her feel safe instead of judged, she opened her mouth and let him feed her. It was the first time in years someone had cared whether she ate at all. This is not a catering job, Uju said, staring at the text message on her phone. Dinner. Tomorrow night. Yellow chili. 8 p.m. You're the guest, not the cook. Wear something that makes you feel beautiful. S. Ngozi read over her shoulder and squealed. Girl, that's a date. The fine Korean man is asking you on a date. He's a client, Uju protested weakly. A client who pays you triple and hand feeds you soup? Uju, wake up. But Uju couldn't go. Yellow chili was upscale, visible, the kind of place where Lagos society went to see and be seen. If her stepmother found out she was having dinner with a man, especially a man like Suzuki, there would be consequences. She texted back, I appreciate the invitation, but I don't think it's appropriate. His response was immediate. I'll pick you up at 7:30. Don't make me come find you. Which is how Uju ended up sitting across from Suzuki Tanjiro in a restaurant that cost more per meal than she made in a week, wearing her only good dress and feeling completely out of place. You look terrified, Suzuki observed, pouring her palm wine. I'm not terrified. I'm cautious. Of me. Of this. She gestured between them. I don't know what this is. Dinner. 2 people eating food. Very simple. Nothing about you is simple, Suzuki. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his usually cold expression into something dangerously handsome. Fair. But you're not simple either, Uju Hamilton. So tell me something real. Why does a 27-year-old woman have a curfew? The question landed like a stone in her chest. She took a long sip of palm wine, buying time. My stepmother. I live in my late mother's guest house on the family estate. Patience, my stepmother. She has rules. What kind of rules? The kind that keep me small. The words escaped before Uju could stop them. I pay rent. My stepsisters don't. I cook for family events. They don't. I'm the help that happens to share DNA with half of them. Suzuki's expression went arctic. Your mother's property. You pay rent to live in your own mother's house. It's complicated. It's theft. He leaned forward. Tell me about your mother. She died when I was 3. Childbirth complications. My birth. The familiar guilt wrapped around her throat. I killed her just by being born. Suzuki reached across the table and took her hand, his grip firm and warm. That's not how childbirth works. Uju. That's not your fault. The words cracked something open in her chest. Tears burned behind her eyes. Everyone says it is. Patience says if my mother had known I'd be so big, she might have. Stop. His voice was steel. Don't finish that sentence. Your stepmother is a liar and a thief, and I'm going to prove it. Uju looked up at him through blurred vision. Why do you care? Because, Suzuki said simply, someone should. Uju was mixing cake batter when her phone rang with her father's number. Chief Hamilton rarely called her directly, so her stomach immediately knotted with anxiety. Uju, come to the main house. Family meeting. She arrived 15 minutes later, still wearing her flour-dusted apron. The entire family was assembled in the formal living room. Her father in his leather chair, Patience perched elegantly on the sofa, and her stepsisters Ruth and Grace draped across the love seat like magazine models. Finally, Grace muttered, "We've been waiting." Ruth stood, practically vibrating with excitement, and thrust out her left hand. A massive diamond caught the light. Victor proposed. We're getting married in 3 months. Uju forced a smile. Congratulations, Ruth. That's wonderful. It's going to be the wedding of the season, Patience declared. 200 guests. The Hamilton Estate Gardens. Everything perfect. She turned to Uju with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. And you're going to cook everything. As your contribution to your sister's special day. The room tilted slightly. Everything? For 200 people. Well, you are a caterer, Grace said with a laugh. It's literally your job. It's my business, which means I charge for my services. Family doesn't charge family. Patience cut in, her voice sharp. Unless you're saying you don't consider Ruth family? The trap closed around her. Uju looked at her father, silently begging him to intervene. Chief Hamilton cleared his throat, but said nothing, returning his attention to his newspaper. Of course Ruth is family, Uju said quietly. I just have other bookings. Cancel them, Ruth said breezily. My wedding is more important than some random people's parties. When you get married someday, I'm sure Ruth will return the favor. Patience added with a thin smile that suggested they all knew that day would never come. That night, Uju lay in Suzuki's arms in his penthouse, telling him about the ambush. She felt him tense beneath her, his breathing deliberately controlled. 200 guests, 12 courses, 3 months of prep, all free. His voice was dangerously calm. What's the groom's full name? Victor Okonkwo. Why? Just curious. He kissed her forehead, but his jaw was tight. And you said yes. I didn't have a choice. You always have a choice, Uju. You just haven't learned that yet. He pulled her closer. But you will. Patience summoned Uju to the main house the following week with a printed document, 12 pages of wedding menu requirements that read like a culinary nightmare. Traditional Nigerian appetizers for the cocktail hour. Patience read aloud. Small chops, puff-puff, spring rolls, samosas, asin peppered gizzard, and gizdodo. Then for the main reception. Jollof rice, both party and native varieties, fried rice, coconut rice, ofada rice with ayame stew, egusi soup, bunga soup, ofensala, pepper soup assortment, assorted proteins including goat meat, beef, chicken, turkey, croaker fish, and catfish, plus vegetarian options. Oh, and a 5-tier wedding cake. Did I miss anything, Ruth? Ruth looked up from her phone. The dessert table. I want chin-chin, puff-puff, buns, coconut candy, and those mini meat pies Uju makes. Uju's hands trembled as she calculated the cost. The ingredients alone will be at least 800,000 naira, maybe more. Then it's good you're not charging us, Patience said sweetly. She pulled out another document. And here are your bridesmaid dress specifications. Size 10. Uju stared at the paper. I'm a size 16. Consider it motivation. Grace smirked. You have 3 months to fit into it, properly. Maybe try eating less? Oh wait, you barely eat anyway. Try existing less. The room erupted in laughter. Even her father chuckled behind his newspaper. Uju took the dress specifications with numb fingers and left without another word. She spent that week preparing sample dishes, testing recipes, pricing ingredients. Her small kitchen became a war zone. She worked 18-hour days until her hands cramped and her back screamed. The bridesmaid dress hung on her door like an accusation. Suzuki found her at 2 a.m., surrounded by failed cake attempts, crying over a collapsed fondant layer. That's it. He grabbed his phone. I'm hiring you a team. Professional pastry chefs, sous chefs, whatever you need. No. Uju wiped her eyes. If I accept outside help, Patience will say I'm incompetent, that I can't handle real work. This has to be perfect, Suzuki. It has to be. Why? They treat you like garbage. Because maybe if I do this perfectly enough, they'll finally see me as family, as worth something. Suzuki pulled her into his arms, his voice rough. You're already worth everything, Uju. They're the ones who are blind. But he didn't push. Not yet. He simply held her while she cried, his patience wearing thinner by the second. His expression, when she couldn't see it, promised violence. 3 weeks before the wedding, Uju stopped sleeping in any meaningful way. Her guest house became a cooking factory. She prepped in batches, marinating proteins at 3 a.m., starting rice dishes at dawn, making pastries until her hands were too cramped to hold a piping bag. The industrial mixer Suzuki had anonymously sent ran continuously. Her small freezer overflowed, forcing her to rent cold storage space she couldn't afford. Ngozi helped when she could, but this was beyond her assistant's capacity. This was madness disguised as family obligation. By week 2, Uju's hands were covered in burns and cuts. She'd lost weight she couldn't afford to lose, her curves hollowing out in ways that made Suzuki's jaw clench every time he saw her. She barely spoke anymore, moving through her kitchen like a ghost, sustained by nothing but stubbornness and the desperate hope that perfection would finally earn her a place at the family table. "Say the word," Suzuki told her on day 15, tending to a fresh burn on her forearm with careful fingers. "Say the word, and I end this. Tonight. They'll never bother you again." After the wedding, Uju whispered, too exhausted to argue, "Ruth deserves her day. Ruth deserves nothing." His voice was cold steel. "But I'll wait. For you." He sent food she didn't eat. He sent his people, introduced as freelance kitchen assistants, to help with logistics and transport. Men in expensive suits who handled her storage containers with surprising gentleness and asked no questions when she gave instructions. "Your boyfriend has interesting friends," Ngozi observed, watching 2 of Suzuki's men load catering equipment into a van. "He's protective," Uju said weakly. "Girl, he's plotting. I can see it in his eyes. That man is 3 seconds away from burning down your family estate." Uju wanted to deny it, but she'd seen that look too. The way Suzuki watched her stumble through her door at midnight, the way his hands curled into fists when she flinched from pain, the way he asked increasingly specific questions about Victor Okonkwo's business dealings. On day 20, patients inspected the completed samples and criticized everything. The jollof was too oily. The egusi was too thick. The cake layers were uneven, even though they were flawless. "I hope the actual wedding food is better than this," patients sniffed. "It would be embarrassing if you ruined Ruth's day." That night, Suzuki held Uju while she shook with exhaustion and suppressed rage. After the wedding, he promised against her hair. "After the wedding, we're done playing nice." Uju had been awake for 36 hours straight when she delivered the final dishes to the estate's event hall kitchen. Her vision blurred at the edges. Her hands trembled carrying the 5-tier wedding cake she'd spent 3 days perfecting. Every muscle in her body screamed for rest she couldn't afford. The wedding was tomorrow. Just one more day. Then it would be over. Patience swept into the kitchen with Ruth and Grace trailing behind her like elegant shadows. She inspected each dish with the critical eye of someone determined to find fault. "The jollof looks acceptable," she said, which from Patience was practically a compliment, "though I still think it could use less oil." "It's perfect, Mother," Ruth said, scrolling through her phone. "Can we go? I have a spa appointment." Patience nodded, then turned to Uju as if remembering something inconsequential. "Oh, Uju, I meant to tell you. Victor and Ruth will need the guest house while they're house hunting. You'll need to be out by next month." The words took a moment to penetrate Uju's exhausted brain. "What? The guest house? They need it. Surely you understand, newlyweds need privacy. You can find somewhere else to live. Maybe get a flat share in the mainland. I hear they're quite affordable." "That's my mother's house." Uju's voice cracked. "You said I could stay there as long as I paid rent. And you have stayed there. For years. But circumstances change." Patience's smile was razor sharp. "Consider it motivation. Maybe if you looked more like your sisters instead of being so substantial and dark, you'd have a husband to move in with by now. But then again, you killed your mother being born so large, so I suppose we're all making do with what we have. The kitchen went silent. Even Grace looked uncomfortable. That's a bit harsh, Mother. Ruth started. It's the truth. Patience cut in. Some truths are harsh. Now, Uju, make sure everything is perfect tomorrow. I'd hate for your last contribution to this family to be a disappointment. They left. Their perfume lingered like poison. Uju stood there, surrounded by 200 guests' worth of food she cooked alone, in a kitchen that would never truly be hers, in a family that had never wanted her. Her phone was in her hand before she consciously decided to move. The number she'd been told never to use unless it was an emergency. This was an emergency. Suzuki, she whispered when he answered. Please come get me. The wedding day was perfect. Brilliant Lego sun. White roses climbing the estate's garden trellises, 200 guests in their finest asoebi, celebrating the union of Ruth Hamilton and Victor Okonkwo. In the kitchen, Uju had been working since 4 a.m. No one had come to check on her. No one asked if she needed help plating for 200. No one invited her to the ceremony. She'd heard the vows through the kitchen window while stirring pepper soup, heard the applause while checking jollof rice temperature, heard the DJ announce the newlyweds while she arranged the dessert table alone. When the reception started, she became invisible. Guests raved about the food. Ruth accepted compliments like she'd cooked it herself. Patience glowed with maternal pride. Grace posted photos with captions about family love. Not one person mentioned Uju's name. By 6 p.m., after serving the last course, Uju's body simply gave out. She collapsed on the kitchen floor, surrounded by towers of dirty pots, her silver bridesmaid dress, the one she'd somehow squeezed into, stained with grease and tears. That's when she made the call. 20 minutes later, a convoy of 6 black Mercedes-Benz vehicles rolled up the Hamilton Estates driveway with the precision of a military operation. The music stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. 200 guests turned to watch as men in impeccable black suits emerged from the cars, men whose posture and cold awareness marked them as dangerous even in Lagos, where danger wore many faces. And then Suzuki Tanjiro stepped out. He moved through the stunned crowd like he owned every molecule of air, his path purposeful, his expression glacial. He didn't stop at the reception. He walked straight into the event hall, straight to the kitchen, where he found Uju curled on the floor. I'm here, he said softly, scooping her into his arms like she weighed nothing. I've got you. Suzuki, wait. Everyone will see. Good. He carried her through the kitchen doors into the reception hall. The collective gasp was audible. Patience shot to her feet, her face a mask of fury and confusion. Excuse me, who do you think you are? Put her down. Suzuki stopped, Uju still cradled against his chest. When he spoke, his voice carried across the silent garden with lethal calm. I'm Suzuki Tanjiro, and I think I'm the man who's been watching you torture this woman for 9 months while I position myself to destroy you. Chief Hamilton stood. Now see here. Sit down, Chief. Suzuki's tone could have frozen fire. Your pharmaceutical import license, granted through connections to my organization, your distribution network, operates because we allow it. Your wealth, he smiled without warmth, exists at my discretion. Patience's face went white. You're bluffing. Am I? Suzuki nodded to Kim, who began distributing folders to nearby tables. That's documentation of your tax evasion, your illegal property occupation, and your smuggling operations through Victor Okonkwo's shipping company. Victor lunged from his seat. Ruth grabbed his arm, suddenly understanding they'd stepped into something much larger than a wedding. You've been investigating us. Patience's voice shook. For months, Victor's organization has been moving counterfeit pharmaceuticals through your distribution network. I needed proof. Suzuki looked down at Uju. Then I met her. The woman you treated like garbage while she fed your guests and paid rent on property that legally belongs to her. That's not true. Patience shrieked. Her mother left that property to the family. Her mother left it specifically to Uju in a will you had sealed illegally. Kim stepped forward with another document. We found the original. You've been collecting rent on a minor's inheritance for 24 years. That's fraud. The wedding guests erupted in whispers. Phones appeared, recording everything. The Hamilton family's social execution was being live-streamed. Suzuki looked at Uju, his voice soft despite the chaos. Do you want to stay with people who would rather see you break than succeed? Uju looked at her father, who wouldn't meet her eyes. At Patience, whose mask had finally cracked. At Ruth and Grace, who suddenly seemed very small. No, she whispered. I want to leave. Then we leave. As they walked toward the exit, Patience screamed, You can't do this. That's my stepdaughter. Suzuki didn't even turn around. She stopped being yours the moment you made her pay for her own mother's house. The convoy pulled away, leaving behind a wedding reception that had become a crime scene, and a family whose empire was crumbling in real time. In the car, Uju finally asked the question burning in her mind. My mother, how did she really die? Suzuki's jaw tightened. I'll tell you everything when we get home. But Uju, you didn't kill her. Someone else did. Uju woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lagos Island. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back. The wedding. The collapse. Suzuki's entrance. The revelation about her mother's will. She was in Suzuki's compound, in a bedroom 3 times the size of her entire guest house. The door opened. Suzuki entered carrying a tray with proper breakfast, akara, bread, fresh fruit, orange juice. Real food, meant for her. You slept 14 hours, he said, setting the tray on the bed. Eat first. Then we talk. Uju ate slowly, her body remembering what hunger felt like now, that it wasn't constantly suppressed. Suzuki watched with satisfaction, then began speaking. I came to Lagos 9 months ago tracking a counterfeit pharmaceutical operation. Victor Okonkwo's shipping company was the distribution point. Your father's pharmacy network was the destination. He pulled out a folder. What I didn't expect was to find you, or to find evidence of something worse. My mother, Uju whispered. Your mother, Chitara Hamilton, died when you were 3, not from childbirth complications. Suzuki's voice was gentle but firm. She was poisoned. Slowly, over several months. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, the damage was irreversible. The room spun. Poisoned? By who? We're still building the case, but the evidence points to Patience. Your mother's will left everything. The guest house, significant investments, property. To you. Patience married your father 6 months after Chitara's death. She's been controlling your inheritance for 24 years. Uju couldn't breathe. My father knew? That's unclear. He's either complicit or willfully blind. Either way, he failed you. Suzuki sat beside her, taking her hand. I need to tell you something else. Meeting you wasn't an accident. I was investigating your family. I came to that gala specifically because I knew you'd be catering it. Pain lanced through her chest. So this was all what? Reconnaissance. It started that way, Suzuki admitted, for about 5 minutes. Then I watched you work. Watched you create beauty while starving yourself. Watched you check your phone like you were terrified of being late to your own oppression. And I stopped giving a damn about the investigation. When did you decide to? To burn down your family for you? He smiled slightly. The moment you told me you paid rent on your own mother's house. I started legal proceedings that night. Everything else was just waiting for the right moment. Uju processed this, emotions warring in her chest. Anger, relief, grief, liberation. What happens now? Now you heal. We've frozen your family's accounts pending investigation. The guest house is legally yours. I'm having it renovated to your specifications. You cook because you wanna, not because you have to. He cupped her face. And I make sure no one ever makes you feel worthless again. Why? The question escaped as a whisper. Why would you do all this for me? Suzuki's expression softened into something that looked dangerously like love. Because watching you create nourishment for people who gave you nothing broke something in me. Because you deserve to be celebrated, not tolerated. Because somewhere between investigating your family and falling in love with you, I realized I'd burn down the entire city if it meant you could finally breathe. Uju kissed him, then, messy and desperate and grateful and free. When they broke apart, she asked the practical question, what about my catering business? What about it? You're talented, Uju, but now you'll have a proper commercial kitchen, legal protection, and clients who pay you what you're worth. He grinned. Also, I'm your first investor. Consider it payment for all the free emotional labor you've provided. I don't need your money. Too bad. You're stuck with it. And me. And a legal team that's very excited to destroy Patience Hamilton in court. Uju looked around the bedroom, then out at Legos stretching below them. For the first time in 27 years, she felt something like hope. I want to see my mother's real will, she said firmly. Already on my desk. And I want to press charges. My lawyers are waiting for your word. And her voice cracked. I want to cook something just for me. Something nobody else gets to taste or criticize or demand. Just for me. Suzuki stood, extending his hand. Then let me show you your new kitchen. It's commercial grade, fully equipped, and completely yours. As they walked through the compound, Uju realized the war wasn't over. Patience wouldn't go quietly. The legal battles would be brutal, and her family would likely never forgive her for exposing their crimes. But for the first time in her life, Uju Hamilton wasn't cooking to earn love. She was cooking because she was finally, beautifully, devastatingly free. The kitchen Suzuki showed her was a cathedral of stainless steel and possibility. Professional-grade stoves, double ovens, a walk-in refrigerator, counter space that seemed to stretch forever. Uju ran her fingers along the marble countertop, barely breathing. It's perfect, she whispered. Like you. She turned, finding Suzuki closer than she'd expected. His eyes held that same dangerous intensity from the first night they met, but now there was something else, something raw and unguarded. I'm not perfect, Suzuki. I'm broken and exhausted and mine, he finished, stepping closer. Say you're mine, Uju. Say you're done running back to people who don't deserve you. I'm done, she breathed. I'm yours. He kissed her then, and it wasn't gentle. It was claiming and desperate and tasted like justice. His hands cupped her face like she was precious, while his mouth devoured hers like he'd been starving for this moment since the night he'd first watched her cook. Uju melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. Every touch erased a piece of her old life. Every kiss wrote a new definition of what love could be, not service or sacrifice, but partnership and protection and passion that burned clean. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Suzuki pressed his forehead to hers. Welcome home, Uju Hamilton. And for the first time in 27 years, Uju believed she actually had won.